I pierced the outer layer of life. The universe replied to it. This world is a ground for our own individual spirits to awaken to who we are. Because of this, there will always be conflicts between what people think and do, because everyone is somewhere else on the scale of their own individual awakening. Knowing this, we realize even though learning and experiencing more of our true selves no longer disturbs us once we enter back into this dimension of time and space, for it is essential for individual growth in consciousness. You learn to discover and figure out your own individuality by piercing the depths of your own consciousness and dare to live by it. We dare to live from our own hearts, and even though people can praise or condemn what we do, in the end we know it is because all of us have our own journey to fulfill and our own awareness to expand. React versus respond, create versus disintegrate. The true meaning of one's own existence cannot be comprehended without piercing the outer layer, meaning without going beyond what was taught based solely on societal rules and egoic existence. I reawaken constantly in this dimension through which you can currently hear my words. For a while it disturbed me. I felt out of balance within my own mind. But now I realize it is nothing to worry about, even though I cannot act truly according to what I have seen and felt from experience in other realms of my being. It will no longer diminish the importance of this dimension in which we now operate. I simply have to learn to let go and allow my individual consciousness to unfold. Even with our expanding awareness, we will always be in conflict with each other and the world because we cannot exercise our own creative powers to the same degree where everything is subject to our individual inherent creative power. It always operates at a more limited degree compared to the true spirit once it awakes and leaves this world forever. This brings us to an important point concerning the study of the true nature of our own being. If what I claim about our own powers is true, how would it benefit us? It benefits us because even though we can only exercise it to a limited degree while in this current body, we are still learning to work with the inherent power bestowed upon you, the power of imagination. There is universal imagination that creates and sustains the whole universe, and then there is the individual's imagination. They are part of the same power, but operate differently, especially in this dimension of time and space so far as our goals are concerned. This is for a divine reason, or else the whole universe would collapse and no individual growth in consciousness could take place. It is the universe that gave you your life in the hopes you became a co-creator and you grasp who and what you really are behind the mask of your own ego and earthly beliefs. Now this is what has happened to you before you entered this world. Your consciousness attached itself to your body and lost all sense of what it really was. Before that, it also didn't have a proper sense of self. It has to have a dimension through which it can experience individuality in order to awaken and lift consciousness up to an individual state. You have been hypnotized and brainwashed by the world, and we have to learn to break the spell. If we are able to break it, we will see into our true natures and we will better understand why we exist in the first place. The first step in breaking the spell is to consider ideas like mine or from others which cause us to consider life from a different angle, hopefully an entirely different angle, not typically based on just our societies in which we currently operate. Rules were put into place simply because we all have different desires, and they will always clash. We can only hope our true desires are of a positive nature and not of a destructive one. But even if the latter were the case, nothing is truly destroyed. Everything is forever being restored to different dimensions of your own actual spiritual self. This keeps on happening until you finally learn the truth of who you are and what your consciousness is capable of doing independent of this physical body. You could be living the most horrible life experience, and yet you will find yourself restored to life over and over again until you take charge and move out of it, and realize you are no longer a victim, but a creator and giver of life. You learn to give life to your own goals, and one day you learn to give life to your own universe in which you are in total control. If this sounds too incredible, I don't know what to say. This is what I have experienced, and I know I'm not the only one who is discovering this about their own individual consciousness. I only hope it sparks something somewhere in the depths of your own being, so that you may find out this truth for yourself. Let us take it back to my claim. Before you entered this world, your consciousness attached itself to your body, causing you to lose all sense of what you were. Instead, we are faced with the fact our consciousness gets boxed in, It gets taught all the important rules of this world, how we can best fit in, and hardly ever get taught anything beyond that. Therefore, we have to peel away the layers of this world so we can work with the deeper parts of our own minds. Again, where do you start? It starts through contemplation of one's own consciousness. It starts by reflecting upon one's own mind and what it is doing and capable of. We have to wonder about our own thoughts, our own power to imagine, and our own power to feel emotions, so we start entering the domain of metaphysics. It doesn't take a smart person to realize that since these powers do exist within consciousness, what would it mean if we learned to direct them at will? And where does this lead what we normally would call our spirit once this body dies? For this body has died more times than you even realize. When I talk about your spiritual body, this is what I mean. No human that ever recalled his or her dream can deny the fact that they were using a body there. And it is this inner body that we want to become conscious of and lay hold of. For it is after you have had the experience of full lucidity, you realize more and more of your true nature that lies beyond the outer layer of life. Many times when we fall asleep, we live in complete reaction to what the dream dictates. Just like in our waking lives, we live in complete reaction to what happens to us. Once you realize you are dreaming, you discover the true power of consciousness. It has shown me that all that matters is what I believe about life. If I want something while lucid in the dream world, I can get it simply by focusing on it inside my own spirit. For I grow towards the thing I focus my mind upon. It shows the work that needs to be done while we are on earth as an individual. We want to learn to control our own minds and learn to control it both when asleep as when awake. It is only then you finally become able to look into your true immortal nature. Learn to dream. Learn to be curious about your own potential. Learn to simply look forward to fulfilling all of your greatest dreams inside your own consciousness. It is once you truly can dream about your own desires and find all your enjoyment inwardly and not be dependent on the outer world that they will become real for you either on earth or simply in so-called heaven. For that is your true home anyway. Let me try and explain this differently. If you can reach that point where night after night you simply dream, as if you already had achieved whatever you want, and totally fall in love with this way of living, where having your desires fulfilled only in the dream world would be enough for you, then what you experience outwardly will change according to what you love inwardly. Again, whether it happens in this life or not doesn't matter, for your life is eternal, so don't despair over anything. Simply learn to live like this and your spirit will take this beyond the so-called grave. Can I provide proof? No, I can only talk from what I personally experience inside my own consciousness, and that ultimately is the only proof we will ever need for ourselves. We want to get the actual experience of these marvelous potentialities. The reason why this works is because ultimately the dream world is the best place to influence your own subconscious mind, therefore radically changing everything around and causing you to find renewed peace and fulfillment after perhaps holding many erroneous ideas about yourself and traumatic events from your own past. It takes the many blows of life to mold your own individual spirit into its true form. It takes the ups and downs of life to ignite your soul essence to find its way out of this giant physical maze of madness in which we find ourselves at times. It is the way for you to one day receive the desire to take back control of who you truly are, not based on the ego, but based on the awareness of your own inner spiritual body, and that inwardly you already possessed all you could ever desire to have and be. The difficulty, as has been shown to me, is that you cannot approach these subjects with your reasoning mind alone. You have to go beyond what your servant mind thinks of it, because that is also the part that just can't grasp it, and thinks it's a little too confusing, Renil, or whoever else makes these claims. But once you learn how to move beyond it, it'll make more sense, is all I can say. So to practice what I preach, this is what I do every night. I close my eyes and I simply imagine I have whatever I personally desire to be and have. Well, physically I might not have it at all, but in the dream world I can have it. And I realize the more I love having it there, and only there, the higher the odds become of perhaps seeing it physically too. But even if it doesn't happen, the strange part is I can get the same enjoyment out of this other dimension of my soul as I would if it were a reality on Earth. The difference simply being, you can't see it or enjoy it with me. But isn't that what your loved ones did when they died as well? You can't see them or enjoy things with them. It's all tied together. That is the beauty. We as humans are on Earth simply to learn this marvelous fact of our own consciousness. And before we do, we must keep going back to Earth until we learn. Since we either love this physical world and seek our happiness in temporary things, or we go beyond it and seek it in eternal things. The latter is where I'm at. Well, that is what I said earlier. Before you entered this world, you still had no concept of what you were. It is by going into this dimension you learn to mold your own individuality. It takes this dimension so you can lift up consciousness into an actual individual state of awareness. What I did not say then, but what I do sense, is that once this happens, you reach a point you can create your own worlds, if you wish to do so. But don't ask me to explain it to your ego. It won't ever make sense, such majestic claims, but it is true. Since lucid dreams are the start of this awakening where you are in a world that is in your total control and you can only control something by first learning what it's like not to control anything at all. That is the mystery of life from a spiritual perspective as far as I can currently see it. In other words, it seems to me the universe had a purpose for humanity, which is to make them co-creators in divinity. Even if you or others don't get to experience it yet in this life, the things I talk about. I hope it does make you feel better about your own journey. If you can accept you are part of this marvelous journey, it could transform someone's entire being in general, by just believing it, you know? That's all I have for today's video. Now let us go into the silence.